Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Justin Peter. I'm one of the owners of Worldwide Quest. We are hosting this afternoon's webinar on Croatia, and I'm very pleased to welcome you here. We have participants streaming in right now, so we're just going to begin in a moment. And of course, today's webinar is on Croatia, a story to be discovered with Sylvia Chrobak. I'll tell you more about Sylvia in a few moments. I just want to mention a couple of technical items for you today. If you see me, if you see my face, but you don't see a slide, there should be a slide right now that shows you beautiful, beautiful coastal scene of the Croatian coast, the Dalmatian. If you don't see that slide, but you see me, note that below my head, there's the gray bar at the bottom of that window, and you should see three little parallel horizontal lines. And if you click on those little lines, the slide should pop down into view. So just try that in case you see me, but you don't see the slide. Today, of course, we will be taking questions. Possibly you have some technical issues. There is the GoToWebinar console, which might appear at the right side of your screen or maybe elsewhere. Within that console, there's a number of tabs. One of them is questions, which is where you'll be welcome to ask questions of the speaker during the presentation, and we'll be getting to those later. There is also a chat box, a chat bar, and if you click on that, it has a little arrow beside it, and it will pop down, and that's a place, if you happen to have any technical issues, you can enter them there. And my colleague, trusty colleague Vishwa, who is assisting with today's technical side of things, can provide you an answer there. That's also a place where we'll be providing you some special messages over the course of today's broadcast. So please watch for that. If you might see a message from Vishwa there as well. I should mention this event is being recorded, and all attendees will be receiving a link to the recording of today's webinar in case you need to leave early. So I just thought I'd mention those few things there. As I mentioned, my name is Justin Peter. I am with Worldwide Quest. We are a small travel company based in downtown Toronto. We've been around since 1970. We happen to have a branch called Alumni Expeditions, which is a branch of our company that offers tours, especially designed for alumni of universities and friends. They're open to all, but these are, like all of our tours are based on learning and interesting experiences, special insights, special access, so that you go away on tour, but you come home with not just memories, but also experiences and new perspectives, new ways of seeing things. So so today's webinar is really part of a series that we are offering through a number of our Canadian university travel partners today, speaking about one of the destinations that interests us, which is Croatia. And it's possible you heard about today's webinar through our mailing list, Worldwide Quest. You might have heard of us also. You might have heard today's event from one of these partnering universities here who are partnering on a tour that we're offering to Croatia. I'll tell you more about that in just a moment. But our specialty really is in small group experiential travel with a high leader to traveler ratio. We go to interesting places. We're I would say a group of inquisitive, curious travelers who like to really get the full experience of the places we visit. And just to mention, today's webinar, as I said, is tied to a tour that we'll be offering next May, which is a Croatia boat bike tour. We sometimes call it boat and bike, and it's a chance to visit the coast of Croatia along the Dalmatian, the Adriatic Sea, in an active way where we travel about in a fully chartered small vessel. I'll show you in a few moments. I'll talk a little bit more about this later after our talk. Yes, we get to stop in along the famed Dalmatian coast of Croatia. Of course, today's event, I'll tell you more about that later. Today's event is an opportunity for us to learn more about Croatia generally. It's a place that that's in the news, I would say, a lot, certainly in the travel world. And we were very fortunate to secure Sylvia Chrobak of the University of Alberta as a study leader with this upcoming tour next May. Sylvia is with the Wirth Institute of Austrian and Central European Studies at the University of Alberta, where she started in 2003, and she's the general manager, the executive manager of that institute, where she oversees the implementation of all the institute's programs, including operationalizing its scholarly and academic activities. Sylvia also manages the Institute's public outreach and education portfolio. She is a proud alumna of University of Alberta's arts in political science and international relations, and she has a special research interest in Central European politics, policy, and minority rights. She's a devoted fan of everything related to Central Europe, including Croatia, and she's traveled widely across Central Europe and coordinated programs and sightseeing tours all over the region in the past 20 years. Sylvia is also a poet and short story writer. She finds much of her inspiration for her writing hidden in the stories of everyday people, the type of people you meet on tours with us, for example, in those in-between places that you rarely see in big tourist brochures. So when given the chance, Sylvia will talk about Central Europe, especially Croatia, and I would like to welcome Sylvia to today's webinar. Sylvia, are you there?
I am here. Can you hear me?
We hear you just fine, Sylvia. It's so great to have you here. We'll be looking forward to hearing about Croatia, getting an overview of Croatia. And later we'll chat a little bit about this tour that we're offering with you as a study leader. And we'll be interested to hear a little bit more about what excites you about the tour that you'll be leading next May with Canadian University alumni. So over to you, Sylvia.
Wonderful. I'm just waiting for my share screen request here, and there we go. Showing the screen. Perfect. Okay, can everybody hear me okay? I'm going to assume that everybody can hear me all right. Thank you for that introduction, Justin. I am really excited to do this webinar. I'm very excited to participate in this trip as a study leader. Anytime I have a chance to introduce anyone to Central Europe, which is really, in my view, one of the most underappreciated regions of the world, I jump at the opportunity. So thank you so much for being able to do that here and for you today. A little bit just more about myself in the context of the Wirth Institute. I want to tell you a little bit about what the Wirth Institute does before I start, so that you understand where a lot of my knowledge or background related to Central Europe comes from. The Wirth Institute was established 25 years ago at the University of Alberta as a Center for Austrian and Central European Studies. It is the only such center in Canada. We're a part of a network of Austrian centers. The Institute does programs mostly with a multidisciplinary, interdisciplinary profile and counts among its member countries what we call successive states of the Habsburg Empire, which are, of course, Austria, Czechia, Croatia, Hungary, Poland, Slovakia, and Slovenia. So we work on a variety of programs, both engaged in research and scholarly and academic work, as well as public programming and educational programming related to Central Europe. And most importantly, our goal is to raise the profile of Central Europe in Canada, internationally, and basically in all of the communities we interact with. With respect to Croatia, the Institute has over the past 25 years, done a lot of different programs. I've personally been involved in programs related to Croatian theater, immigration, demining, Yugoslav wars, the Holocaust, music, multiculturalism in Central Europe, as well as perceptions of indigenous populations of North America in Central Europe. So that's kind of where a lot of my interests also lie, but a lot of my educational background on Croatia comes from that and from those experiences and having taken part in organizing and implementing a lot of that programming. So I will start with my presentation, which I will tell you I struggled a little bit with ahead of today, because there's so much one wants to share about a country like Croatia, and with the limited amount of time, it's difficult to narrow exactly the things that are important. I've taken a lot of slides out today, not to sort of overwhelm you with things, and decided to focus on the things that I thought might be most interesting about Croatia, things that you might not immediately learn elsewhere, and sort of try to get you excited about this country and this part of the world. I will start with talking about the basics related to Croatia, which is sort of your standard, Wikipedia type of stuff, but I think stuff that travelers contemplating a destination ought to know nonetheless. So the basics about Croatia are that it's a country with a population of about 3.9 million and the size of 56, not about, because it's an exact size, 56,594 square kilometers. Its capital city is Zagreb. It is a predominantly Christian country, with 79% of the country being Roman Catholic, approximately just over 3% being Orthodox Christians, and then 5% being other Christian denominations, and other sort of others not declaring specifically a faith. As of 2009, Croatia is a member of NATO. As of 2013, it is a member of the EU. And it is anticipated, this is quite exciting news, it is anticipated that Croatia will join the OECD countries in 2025. Now, that's the Organization for Economic Cooperation, which currently has 38 members globally. And those members at the moment include Austria, Czechia, Hungary, Poland, Slovakia, and Slovenia, who are already members. So Croatia is overdue to join, and Central Europe is, of course, really well represented in that organization. So where's Croatia? Croatia is in Central Europe. It is often referred to as a country in the Balkans, though I think most Croats themselves don't describe themselves necessarily that way, and I can get to that a little bit later in the presentation as well. Croatia borders Slovenia, Hungary, Serbia, Bosnia and Herzegovina, Montenegro, which is the smallest border to the south. It's about a 19-kilometer border, I believe. And it shares a maritime border with Italy along the Adriatic Sea. Zagreb is Croatia's capital city. It has a population of approximately 800,000 inhabitants. That puts it in a Canadian context somewhere around Quebec City or Winnipeg. So that's the largest city in Croatia. Split and Rijeka are the second and third largest city. Split is a city of approximately 160,000 people. That is the size of about Barrie, Ontario, or Sherbrooke, Quebec, with Rijeka being a population of 109,000 and that is about the size of White Rock, British Columbia, or Moncton. Croatia is divided into 3 regions, which are then subdivided into 20 counties. The 3 regions are the Northwest Croatia, Central and Eastern Croatia, and the Adriatic Croatia. Now, on this trip, in those 20 sort of subdivided counties of Croatia, you will have an opportunity to visit 2. Those would be the Dubrovnik, Neretva counties and the split Dalmatia counties. The split Dalmatia county is actually one of the fastest growing and fastest urbanizing of counties in Croatia at the moment. Why does geography matter? I'd like to sort of bring your attention to these slides here, and there's slides that sort of help understand why a lot of people, myself included, refer to Croatia as a country that is in Central Europe, Central Southeast Europe. It's because oftentimes people think of Central Europe, refer to it as frequently Eastern Europe, with respect to Croatia, often the Balkans, as a sort of place that's somewhere far off in the east, far off in some inaccessible land. And I think that's traditionally how a lot of people think about Central Europe and vis-a-vis Western Europe, for example. So I wanted to just tell you and demonstrate with these little slides that, for example, Zagreb, the capital of Croatia, is actually west of Vienna. It is only 365 kilometers southwest of Vienna. It is really only 1,050 kilometers south of Berlin. And it is about 14 hours or just under 1,400 kilometers from Paris. I mentioned this because a capital city like Rome in Italy is much farther from Vienna, much farther certainly from Berlin, and also a little bit further from Paris as well than, say, Zagreb. But a lot of people don't think of places like that as places that are inaccessible or that are somehow, somewhere in the hinterlands of Europe. So I think we need to change the way we think and we conceptualize Central Europe. What Croatia is, and why I think of it as a Central European country, is because I think of its deep connections to the Central European, common sort of Central European heritage and history. It also is, of course, influenced by Mediterranean and Adriatic cultures. And its religious identity makes it quite unique. I think because it is a Roman Catholic country that has for so long existed at the boundary between Austria and Austria-Hungary and the Ottoman Empire. This has really shaped a lot of the identity of modern day Croatia as a sort of Western Catholic nation surviving on the boundary of sort of Orthodox Christians and Muslims. And so you will hear me refer to Croatia now and in the future as definitely a country that I place in Central Europe. Brief history of Croatia. Now, this is impossible to do with any country, let alone a country in Europe and a country that has such a sort of complicated geopolitical position. So I did a very quick sort of point form of a summary, just to give you an idea of sort of the modern day territory of Croatia where it originated. But each one of these points, these bullets on the slide, could be its own presentation or two. So I'm not going to go into that right now. I do intend to, during the tour itself, talk a little bit more in detail about some of these parts. But for now, I think it's just kind of to give you a sense of where Croatia came from, or what it came through in history. Now, some of these things overlap. I put them in as much of a chronological order as I could, but some of these points actually are not as simple as to put in that kind of a chronological order. But Croatia became part of the Roman Empire in the 1st century BC. In the 5th century, of course, it fell under the Byzantine rule. Slavs arrived in the area approximately late 6th to 7th century. The Kingdom of Croatia was established in 925 and lasted until 1102, with King Tomislav being the first king of Croatia. In the 12th century, it formed a personal union with the Kingdom of Hungary, maintaining its sovereignty and regional integrity, with much of Dalmatia falling under the rule of the Republic of Venice. From the late 15th to the 17th century, it was mostly occupied by the Ottoman Turks. The 17th century until the end of World War I, it was part of the Habsburg monarchy. And from 1918 to 1929, part of Kingdom of Serbs, Croats, and Slovenes. From 1929 to 1941, part of Kingdom of Yugoslavia, then part of a brief period of an independent state of Croatia, followed by Socialist Federal Republic of Yugoslavia, for the largest part under the rule of Tito, and then went through a period of a tragic, difficult period for the country, of wars of independence, and of course having declared its independence on June the 25th, 1991. A little bit about the culture and heritage of Croatia. Croatia is a country of contrasts. It's a country where the modern meets the traditional. I realize that one might say this about a lot of places, in the world, of course. But I think it's rare that these two spheres are observed so closely, and this is something quite beautiful and interesting and unique about Croatia, is how it manages to perfectly balance that traditional part of its culture and of its heritage with a very modern, progressive way of being as a nation, as a European nation. It has a very rich cultural heritage. I think much of that heritage is shared with a lot of other parts of Central Europe and its neighbors, and not just Central Europe and its neighbors to the west and north, of course, also with parts of the Balkans and its neighbors to the east and southeast as well. It is strongly influenced by its neighboring countries, whether that's by sort of positioning itself quite frequently through its history as being not something that is across its border, or not something that is dominating in a neighboring culture, but it is also a country that has embraced quite warmly and quite openly, and quite enthusiastically, I would say, a lot of the influences of its neighboring countries. Croatians have a very strong sense of community. and also very strong sense of family ties and family traditions. And I think that makes them not unlike a lot of other Slavic peoples of Europe, but certainly a culture that places a great emphasis on family and family ties. The islands and sort of nature of Croatia are really what I think brings a lot of people and fascinates a lot of people. Sort of what a lot of people find fascinating about the country. It has over 1,000 islands and islets. Some are tiny. I mean, some are like rocks. So I don't know if they fully count as sort of islands, but I think you know, it's a very good slogan for brochures, travel brochures especially, to say that. But it has some very large and beautiful islands, the largest of which are island of Kirk, Cres, Brač, and Hvar. And some of these, of course, you would get to explore if you decided to join on this tour. 44% of the country is forest. 10% of the country falls under protected areas. Now, those are sort of wetlands, grasslands, marine habitats. There's a lot of biodiversity in Croatia. It is a beautiful country from the perspective of sort of nature. If you like interacting with nature, if you like, you know, going to places where you feel like there's a strong emphasis placed on the protection of nature, I think Croatia is a good country to visit. It has a lot of national parks and reserves. Those fall under the 10% of the country's land that falls under protected areas. It also has the #1 marine water quality in all of Europe, which I think might surprise a lot of people. But the waters on the Eastern Adriatic are really quite clean. Some would say pristine. I mean, to the degree that Italians actually import fish from the Eastern Adriatic because they think they taste better and certainly come from cleaner waters than fish on the Italian side. So there's much to be said for the efforts that Croatia has also taken to protect its biodiversity and its protected areas. And continues to do so. What is modern Croatia? I'm trying to go quickly through the slides here and realizing that there's so much I want to say about each part. But you know, modern Croatia is a country that's quite, I guess, similar to a lot of European countries that are popular with tourists. It's a very safe country. It's a country with incredibly well developed tourism, and tourism industries is huge in modern Croatia. It is a country that is growing, and it's growing at an incredible pace. It is a country, I think, that is very forward-looking. A lot of people maybe don't appreciate some of the sort of rapid changes that have taken place in Croatia, but if you consider that Croatia was engaged in a war for its independence just a little over 30 years ago, and today it is a member of the European Union. It is a member of NATO. It is a member of the Eurozone as of January 2023, where it also joined the Schengen area of the European Union. It's the 20th country to join the Eurozone. Now, it joined the European Union in 2013. That's 10 years ago. and it has already joined the Eurozone, which a lot of countries that have been, a lot of Central European countries that have been part of the European Union for longer have not yet been able to do, such as Poland, for example. So I think this just speaks to how disciplined the Croats are, how forward thinking you know, that they are, and how quickly and rapidly the country is changing. I couldn't resist and had to put a slide for the Croatian football team, Devatreni, which is one of my favorite football teams in all of football. I'm a huge football fan, and have followed Croatia and the success of this particular generation of footballers for a long time. The picture that you will see on the slide here is one of Luka Modric, who is the captain of Croatia's national team. There is Mbappe of France there, and that is a picture from the 2018 World Cup, where Croatia took silver. Now, the success of the team is really difficult to stress, given the resources and well, given how small the country is to begin with, and who it competes with usually in the world of soccer, as particularly on the international elite sort of scene. Croatia never ceases to surprise, I think, with how strong and mighty it really is as a football nation. I think football plays a large part in sort of, has played a large part and continues to play a large part in shaping a national kind of consciousness and sort of creating some national unity as well in Croatia. In typical fashion for a Croatian football team, if you know anything about the team and you follow them, you know they do things very dramatically a lot. They were the last on the last day of qualifying to the Euro Cup in 2024. They sort of waited until the last day to qualify to secure their spot, which I think left all of their fans nervous and on the edge of their seats as always. But they don't disappoint. They're a fabulous team, and I myself will be cheering for them during the Euro Cup for sure. Croatia, as I mentioned already, has a great tourism infrastructure. It now is expanding a lot into areas of ecotourism as well. And I think that's something that is a growing area definitely in Croatian tourism. Croatia has fabulous coffee and cafe culture. Now, I was reminded by somebody to mention that this is a recent conversation I had with our Croatian fellow at the Institute, but I was reminded to mention that Croatia doesn't have any Starbucks locations, and Anna Maria, who's our Croatian fellow, mentioned that, you know, Starbucks wouldn't make a lot of money in Croatia because Croatia doesn't have the kind of coffee drinking culture that is profitable. People don't want to take coffee out to go. People don't want to take coffee out to go, and don't want to be on their way. They want to sit, they want to socialize. The cafe culture is very much culture that that allows people to unwind, to socialize, to connect with people, to take a break in their day, and not one where it's just caffeine being the fuel for the body to keep being more productive. So you might want to take a note on that. And we can all learn, I think, from Croatia a little bit of something there. Education and cultural life of Croatia, of course, I mentioned cultural life is very rich, vibrant life. There are so many festivals in Croatia and so many wonderful things to see and visit. Croatia's National Theatre is amazing. For those of you who will be going on this trip, the National Theatre in Split is beautiful. The building itself is gorgeous. I hope you would have a chance to see it. In Dubrovnik, there is a great summer festival. I think it's called the Dubrovnik Summer Festival. I'm not sure. I'd have to double check, but it's a large festival of arts and culture that is really well known across Central Europe. The education sector is certainly strong in Croatia. Croatians are very well educated people. They value education. They put a great emphasis on education and have wonderful institutions of their own, many of which our institute and our university partners with. On the tourism part, I wanted to mention to you something that I came across just a little over a month ago, I think. For those of you interested in sort of the Camino de Santiago pilgrimages, or the as they're called, the Way of St. James in English, a new route is actually planned and set to open, I think, in either 2024 or 25. And it's a route that will go from Dubrovnik to Medudro in Bosnia. And it is its own little pilgrimage to a monastery that I would have to look up how long the path is, but I imagine probably just under a couple of 100 kilometers. And of course, I think I have no doubt that it'll become a very, the sights that one would get to experience on that journey would be quite stunning. So I have no doubt it'll become a very, very popular addition to the Camino de Santiago paths and pilgrimage routes to northwestern Spain and Galicia. So if you're interested in that, keep an eye on this new route opening sometime in the near future. That brings me to sort of Dalmatia and where this trip will be, and the story of Dalmatia. And my intent really is to not talk about it a lot right now in this presentation. There just isn't time, but to tell you a little bit about kind of how I imagine shaping some of the educational components of the tour, and sort of telling you a lot more about Dubrovnik, a lot more about Split, but also telling you about the food and wine culture of Croatia and the influences of it, how important the coastline is, and the Adriatic is to Adriatic Mediterranean culture to the identity of Croatia. There was an opportunity to visit, of course, a lot of beautiful islands as part of the trip. And there are stories in each of those islands. Perhaps we'll finally solve where Marco Polo really was born and where he comes from. Now, no Croatians will claim that he was Croatian. He was clearly Venetian, but his birthplace, I think, becomes still a contentious issue. So maybe we'll find some clues along the way to answer that burning question: where was Marco Polo born? The people of Croatia. I would like to tell you a lot more about the people of Croatia, some important figures in Croatian history, and just sort of about the way of life for people of Croatia, as much as I'm familiar with, and I know there's some really wonderful stories there, and I would like to be able to share those with you. And I'd like to share with you sort of in some of the last parts of this presentation. I'm looking at things I wanted to mention, and I realize I probably won't get to everything. So in the last parts of the presentation, I wanted to just mention to you something that I think I'd like to leave you with, and I think that all of us can learn a little bit from Croatia, and it is a way to relax, and it's a concept of Faka, which I first learned about almost a decade ago myself, and it was something that I was introduced to as I was doing a course. I'm a cancer survivor, so I was doing a course on mindfulness and meditation as part of the cancer center where I was treated. And at the time, one of the Croatian fellows had said to me that, well, you know, this concept of flow and mindfulness already exists, excuse me, in Croatia, and that is Faka. Now, what is Faka? Pardon me. My apologies. I am recovering from a flu this week, so my voice is a little bit strained, and it does tend to get drier. It'll take a second. There we go. I think it means it's time to Faka for me. Faka is the Croatian version of a flow, really. And it is a dreamy, sublime-like state. It's described as a faint unconsciousness, a state of mind that is the sweetness of doing nothing, and the freedom to surrender completely. Like the Italian, dolce far niente, the sweet idleness, which is an expression I actually learned this past spring when I was traveling the Italian coast, and came across this quite a bit in my travel south of Naples in the Amalfi Coast. And I think this is something that's really important, this concept to people of Dalmatia. And so I wanted to tell you a little bit, I think, about why it's important and why it's a way of life in sort of Dalmatia, by quoting to you a Croatian poet, translator, theater critic, Jakša Flamenco, who describes it as, my apologies, my voice is really horrible, but I will try to do this, who describes it as, I will try to read it, but it is on the screen. It is like a faint unconsciousness, a state beyond the self, or, if you will, deeply inside the self, a special kind of general immobility, drowsiness and numbness, and weariness, and indifference towards all important and ancillary needs, a lethargic stupor, and general passivity on the journey to overall nothingness. The sense of time becomes lost, and its very inertness and languor give the impression of a lightweight instant. More precisely, it's half somewhere and half nowhere, always somehow in between. The Faka can also be understood as a kind of inner purification, like reading, leafing through books full of white space that does not commit us to anything, which is just preparation for active engagement in spiritual life. Many good ideas must have been initiated in this in-between state, in the bliss of a sleep that is not sleep, a consciousness that is not conscious, a time that is not time. Therefore, don't judge too harshly the fiacugni. They are just nesting in a hidden corner of their self and lying far away from everything, even from themselves. So the reason I like this so much is because I truly believe we need to withdraw sometimes. This is important, that being unproductive is the fuel to being productive, that we need to have moments where we just quite simply check out and take time for sort of being still. And I think that you will find a lot of those opportunities, hopefully, when you're in Croatia, because it is a beautiful place, a serene and a calm place amidst how busy it is. It is a very calm place, and I think you would really enjoy it. My last slide really is about why you should travel to Croatia. Well, I think because it's good to be introduced to new things, to new places, to new regions of the world. And for those of you who haven't traveled to Central Europe, I encourage you to really consider Central Europe as a whole as a destination for travel. It's amazing. Václav Havel, a great statesman, Czech statesman, said people need to live in truth. And I think that much of Central Europe is trying to do this now. It is having a bit of a revival where people are trying to tell their stories. They're trying to rediscover what it means to come from their countries, to come from Central Europe, to be proud of coming from Central Europe, to sort of not have to constantly argue with people about why we're not Eastern Europe. You know, a lot of things that have been written, said, and a lot of focus on Central Europe tends to be sort of on the negative sides of its history, its past, on negative events, and I think that's not fair to this region of the world. You know, people don't travel to Paris thinking about the, you know, lives lost during the Napoleonic Wars, and don't even think about Napoleon, you know, in ways that, you know, we often think about when we look at Central Europe and the events that happen in that region, and look at them very critically. You know, half of the books written about Central Europe are, you know, either about some atrocities, them being bloodlands, or, you know, full of ghosts of, you know, Balkan ghosts of Central Europe and other things. And I think we need to change that a little bit. I think we need to change how we talk about this region of the world. I think Central Europe is trying to reclaim its place, not just vis-a-vis Western Europe, who have an easier way getting, you know, away with their telling their stories than I think our part of the world does. But I think what we're slowly learning, I think, still to a great extent, is that in Central Europe we cannot let the past enslave us and chain us to sort of our most disturbing memories. That we have to let go of some of these things and move forward and tell our stories as the optimistic, the exciting stories that they really are, full of really wonderful and beautiful chapters that the world ought to discover. So that is all for my presentation. And if you have questions, and if you have specific interests that you'd like to bring to my attention about Croatia, I would love to chat with you more about that. I'm sorry if I went a little long, Justin. It's hard, and with my voice.
It was very interesting to learn about Faka. It's something I think we should all practice a little bit more. We have some questions from our audience so far. I'll just remind you that we do have the questions tab if you're watching this broadcast. So if you have any questions, now is the time to enter them. I see that there were a few that were put in there, and I'm going to ask them of you. And then I have a question for you to ask us.
Yes.
To ask for you to tell us about this trip that we're planning with you in May.
Uh-huh.
One question we have is from Michael, who is asking, very specific question, what comments, good or bad, would you have about Vrsar and the area around this northern Croatian city? I think this is on the far northwest of the Dalmatia, Vrsar. What can you tell us about Vrsar?
Oh gosh, I don't know. Sorry?
We're not going to visit there on our tour, but
Yeah, you know what? I don't know much about it, like in a lot of details. So I think I can get back to him though with a lot of information, I'm sure.
yes.
Yeah.
Interesting. I have a question from Anne. Is Croatia part of the Schengen area yet?
It is, yes. It joined the Schengen area along with the Eurozone, so it now uses euro as the currency. Where with the Croatian kuna being phased out at the end of this year, actually, entirely. So by the end of December, the kuna will no longer be a currency. Even though it's not being used right now, only the euro is being used, people could still, I think, have transactions with the kuna, and it's being phased out. But yes, Schengen zone, it has joined the Schengen zone, and it is a part of the free movement and mobility area now. Yeah.
The question from, thank you. A question from Donald is asking, how is immigration influencing the people and culture of Croatia?
Immigration. That's interesting because that's a very complex question. You know, there's immigration, the aspect of immigration where Croats left Croatia over various stages. I mean, there was Croatian immigration in post World War II, Croatian immigration in the 90s, Croatian refugees in the 90s as well. So there's that kind of Croats leaving, then they are coming back. So a lot of people who are Croatians lived abroad and are returning to Croatia now to live. Croatia is a relatively homogeneous country. I wouldn't say it has a lot of people who live, you know, there. I mean, of course, there are people who live in Croatia who are not Croatians, but I don't know if it's if it's more influenced by, for example, immigration right now, unless the question is, you know, related to migration or other things. But immigration itself, you know, I don't think it's more influenced or less influenced by it than sort of how it's been influenced through its own history by external, you know, empires, borders, kingdoms, you know, and peoples who have, you know, migrated through the region over the many centuries. So yeah, I hope that answers the question.
Yeah, I hope. Gwen is asking, when is Vatreni season? When is the Voice Croatia recorded? I will be in Dalmatia in late September. Vatreni season.
So is she asking about the Euro Cup specifically? Or is she?
I'm not sure. That's the question. When
are you asking about Euro Cup? Because Euro Cup is going to be in Germany in June and July, and so it won't be part of the matches for Euro Cup. The Croatia's national football team will not play until June and July as part of the Euro Cup.
Okay. I think maybe it's just generally when is the season, the season for the team. This is Croatia's national football team we're talking about.
So the Croatia's national football team would be playing all along. I mean, if she's wondering about other games and other teams, I can, you know, certainly look up schedules, for example, for Dinamo Zagreb, you know, which is a major football team in Zagreb that I also follow, and that is an ongoing season as well. Croatia does play in, you know, in the other European leagues as well, right? So if you wanted to look at it, I will recommend, because I follow Croatia quite closely, and I use an app, a FOTMOB app. It's so it's football. It's called FOTMOB, and you can add Croatia in that app and kind of follow the team and itself and all of their games. But if
FOTMOB, FOTMOB.
Yeah, FOTMOB. It's a pretty good app that you can download onto any device, and you can add your favorite teams and follow them. And I've been using it, for years. And you can sort of look at upcoming matches and when teams are playing. I can look it up right now and tell you that. Yeah.
when we've sent FOTMOB to Gwen, and she's going to look it up. So that's great. She's saying brilliant. Thank you. I have another question. From Michael, in Croatia, do they drive on the right side of the road, like in the USA, or on the left side, like in Great Britain?
Oh, they drive on the normal side of the road.
Normal for us. Yeah. Good question. Good question. And I think I don't know if we had any additional questions there. I know I had one question for you, and that was with regard to our expedition next May 1st to the 11th. We are going to be, of course, meeting at the bottom here, Dubrovnik, and spending a couple of days there before embarking on a vessel and sailing up the coast and ending in Split. What is most special about this part of the world, and about this part of Croatia?
What is most special? Oh God, I think that's hard to say. Because the scenery is so spectacular, right? I mean, the water is so clean, the scenery is so spectacular. So, that in itself is worth making the trip. And in a trip like this, where it is made so easy, you don't have to go on ferries. There are ferries between all of these little islands, right? You don't have to go on ferries. You don't have to carry anything, from ferry to ferry. You're just going there and enjoying yourself and visiting these places. I think what's really special about it is how they are part of the same region, but they're all unique in a certain way. Every single island tells, its own story. I think food, my goodness, food.
Yeah.
Dalmatian food, wine is absolutely spectacular. So I think if anybody who's a bit of a foodie and an food enthusiast will definitely enjoy a trip like this. Some of the best seafood probably you will have would be in Croatia, fish included. So yeah, absolutely.
Interesting, very interesting. Yes, and in fact we are planning this expedition, and I'll share a couple more. As I mentioned, this is a boat and bike trip that Sylvia is going to be leading, and we're going to be starting in Dubrovnik, spending a couple of days on land there, and then we're going to have 7 nights aboard this small vessel, the SV Magellan, and enjoying hopping and skipping up the coast. And daily, once we've started cruising, we're going to have daily bike rides, bikes provided to us. We also have e-bikes if you're not don't wish to be so active. We have e-bikes. That means that they're propelled for you, that allow you to enjoy different locations, different islands as we go along, enjoying that beautiful scenery, the vineyards and the coast and all that lovely scenery with site visits along with Sylvia. Sylvia will be giving us presentations and tutorials, maybe, but presentations on board daily, and then we'll be visiting with Sylvia along the coast. So our bike rides are from about 20 to 30 kilometers a day. There's one 50-kilometer ride, but as I said, e-bikes are available. But if you like to be active, this is a trip as well. You can bike self-propelled all the way if you like as well. So I want to thank you, Sylvia. Oh, and I should just mention, we'll provide everyone who's attending the recording of this event, as well as a link to the trip if you want to learn more about the trip. And I think my colleague Vishwa may have also plugged in the link to the tour inside the chat box. Thank you all for attending. Thank you so much, Sylvia, for giving us an overview of of Croatia. We don't feel over-traveled. It gives us just a taste and a sense, you know, of a desire to go and discover it. And I know I learned something from today's webinar, notably that the Danube forms part of the border with Croatia. I never realized, with Serbia. I never realized. I know we all learned something from you, Sylvia. Thank you so much. Thank you all to all of our attendees, and enjoy the rest of your afternoon. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Justin. Thanks,
Bye.
everyone. Bye-bye.